and welcome back to the Club 303 podcast, episode 2. Not just a group chat thing, not just a one-time thing. We're basically officially here, burst onto the scene, episode 2. And today's going to be a good one, covering the National League Central, as you may be able to tell. We got a couple of National League Central fans in here, and I already, by looking at the doc and who some of the players we'll talk about specifically later on, can imagine might get some heated arguments going this episode. We'll have to see. Should be a fun one. Talked about NL West last week. If you haven't seen that, go check that out. This week, it's the NL Central. Boys, how we feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm really excited to talk about my favorite team, the Cubs. And I know, Machine, your favorite team is the Cardinals. We're kind of butting heads there, but I'm excited to dive in and get into it.
Yeah, it pisses me off. The Cubs are making moves. I'm gonna have to shit on him anyway.
Yeah, I'm mainly excited for this episode because we have two people who their favorite teams are in this division. It's one of the most. It's gonna be probably the most tightly contested division, or at least one of them in this next season coming up. So there's just so many interesting things to talk about with this division.
Yeah, I think this division's one of the most across the board pretty equal divisions. Every year, I mean, it's a pretty big toss-up of who's gonna get it, and so and especially this is actually, it is the only time we're gonna have two fans of two teams in the divisions. So, I'm sure this is gonna get fun later on.
Yeah, later on, but we're gonna start with, as we talk about how competitive this division is, we're gonna talk about first the one team that will not be competitive and hasn't even attempted to be competitive for probably about 10 years now. It's going to be the Pittsburgh Pirates. The team that spends less. I saw a graphic yesterday. They have not signed a free agent to a multi-year contract in literally 10 years. The last guy was Francisco Liriano. Like, unreal. Long time. And what was it, 2013? They had a playoff run. Or made it to the wild card at least with McCutchen and.
I think they back-to-back years where they made the wild card. There's the one year they beat the Reds, and there's the one they lost to the Giants. I think it was 2013, 2014.
Since then,
if I remember correctly, yeah.
Nothing.
So, I mean, I'll jump in. I can't agree with Machine that this is a team that 100% won't win the division. I truly think any of these teams can win the division. I think the Pirates are definitely the most concerning team because there's no offseason moves. They have this rotation that I think is going to be pretty good in this next upcoming season, but they've done nothing to support it. The bullpen is also very concerning. They got guys like Bednar is a good closer. He's coming off a down year, but he'll bounce back. And then after that, it's like you have Colin Holderman, who could be decent at step role, and then you have Dennis Santana, and then it's just downhill from there. There's not a whole lot of big moves. They brought in Tommy Pham, Machine's number one guy. He'll probably be playing right field for the Pirates.
He'll give you a reason to watch one way or the other. The guy's an entertainer. That's all I'll say.
Exactly. You got that, and then it is interesting they moved Cruz to center field because Brian Reynolds can't play on center field anymore. They need to fill that hole in. And again, and there's Spencer Horwitz is a guy that's interesting at first base coming out from Toronto. He looked pretty good there last year. There's a lot of interesting things with this Pirates team, like outside of obviously the rotation with Skeens, Keller, Jared Jones, and hopefully Bubba Chandler maybe later on this year. But yeah, the lineup is very, very sketchy, I will say.
Yeah, I think the thing that, about this Pirates team, it's the same as any other Pirates team. It's not like there's, zero talent, there's obviously some young, really talented pieces, but it's also every single one of those guys that we can talk about that is exciting, potentially. It's like, right now they're too young to make a difference, to be a contender probably, those kind of players. And then when they do get a little bit of seasoning and hit their peak, they're just going to be traded. So it's like, they're exciting players, but it's hard to get excited about them as Pirates, I feel like.
I think this is I partially agree with what Machine said at the beginning, and I partially disagree because I think this team is one of the teams to watch over the next 3 to 5 years. Especially like you guys mentioned Bubba Chandler quite a bit, and as one of the better prospects in really all of baseball. I think their pitching has the potential to be so overwhelmingly good compared to their hitting. And that's really going to be something that they need to figure out in the long run. Obviously Paul Skeens, but then you also have guys like Jared Jones who are, dealing and are going to probably continue to be good for the long haul. So I think you really just have to give this team time and let them develop and let them reform their franchise. I mean, when it was Garrett Cole and McCutchen and Yankee legend Francisco Cervelli behind the plate, those were really good teams. They had potential every year, and they were always a contender in this division. So I think give this team the time to build back to what it was, and they have the pieces to do that if they can really get someone to anchor down the lineup. I don't know if Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is going to be like a big part of their lineup because he's been so wishy-washy, but I think if they can find someone to really anchor down that lineup, whether it be a leadoff hitter or even a cleanup hitter, like it doesn't have to be like a big power hitter, just somebody to really light that fire, I think they'll be okay here in the long run, just not right now.
I totally agree with that, Stokes. I mean, I'd say that with this team right now, the future does look bright in some aspects, but they are still rebuilding, I'd say. Like you mentioned with Paul Skeens and Jared Jones emerging as young pitching prospects with some big upside. Obviously, Paul Skeens had that breakout year, and he's, the most electric pitcher with the brightest future, I'd say, right now in the MLB. And then you look at Brian Reynolds and O'Neill Cruz. That's an exciting offensive duo. And Cruz is one of those guys that could have a breakout season in 2025.
Yeah, I will say, as much as I'm ragging on him, I feel like he's almost starting to go back under the radar a little bit with, because of the injury, and he missed so much time, and then, some more guys came up, like Elliot De La Cruz, I feel like is taking a lot of the NL Central spotlight away from O'Neill Cruz. But people forget, O'Neill Cruz literally just hits the ball harder than anybody. Literally.
Do you guys remember when he first came into the league and the highlights from his bat speed and from him just on the field were crazy? I mean, people really kind of forgot about that guy as time went on, and which is crazy to say because he hasn't been in the league for very long at all. But yeah, that guy's going to be a real threat in that lineup. I don't think he's at the level yet to just hold it down, but that's a really good ball player.
Well, let's think too, and then obviously he's making the position change from shortstop to center field to where hopefully that keeps him more healthy and more fresh to where you get that the upside that we've seen from the bat, the 121 exit velocity, just otherworldly numbers. Getting that more consistently, it's pretty almost kind of the same game plan I think as the Padres have with Tatis, which is move him to the outfield, keep him more healthy there, and let his bat play. So I think it's that, and then I guess other notes on the Pirates. Again, the Pirates, there's a lot of guys and names here that are interesting and fun to me, but it's just the ceiling is not as high as a lot of these other Central teams, and that's why for each all of us, I think the Pirates are going to be a fun team to watch mainly because of that in rotation, but it's probably doesn't have the ceiling that definitely that the Cubs have, that the Reds would have, I would argue, and even the Brewers, yeah.
All right, left one team out there, but I can't even argue with you, to be honest.
Yeah, we'll get to the Cardinals.
But first, let's talk about the Reds. They're a team that, shout out to our fellow Palm Springs Power former employee, Morgan, who's a big Reds fan. And when we were out there in California in 2023, that was the year where they really came on and kind of broke out a little bit. They couldn't really finish the season off with the pitching struggles back then. Now the young pitching seems to be kind of a strength. This Reds team, if they can put it together, they could be pretty surprisingly dangerous, I think.
Yeah, I'll start. I'm kind of like all in on the Reds. I like looking at this lineup. I thought the same thing last year, so I will say that. But I truly think if this lineup stays healthy, you got Friedel, De La Cruz, Matt McLean, Stevenson, Fraley, Steer, Candelario, Lux, and Hayes. I think it's a really, really good lineup. It's mainly can Matt McLean stay healthy? Can TJ Friedel stay healthy? Can you can Candelario kind of be more consistent like he was, before he got to Cincinnati when he was with the Cubs? And same with Gavin Lux. He'll get more opportunity with the Reds than he got with the Dodgers. There's a lot of things, and even the rotation. Like Hunter Green really stepped up last year. Kind of, we saw him approach his capabilities that we all expected with him as a prospect. Then they traded for Brady Singer. That was a big move for them. Got Andrew Abbott, Nick Martinez coming back, and Nick Lodolo. That's also a really good rotation for this division. And a bullpen with Alexis Diaz, Taylor Rogers, Pagan Suter. This team is very deep in my opinion. And last year they got off track because of the injuries and everything like that. But there's so many guys on this team that I just really really like.
I think it's going to be a big restart for the Reds specifically. Like you're bringing in a new coach, in Francona, who has done a lot, and he has got a really, really, really good resume. And then you have the potential to have a lot of really star players. I mean, I could see De La Cruz winning the NL MVP this year. Which I don't feel like that's a super big stretch to say that. I mean, there are obviously some really talented players in the NL, but I think that's going to be really a good point for them is to have De La Cruz and guys like Matt McLean. I like Matt McLean. I'm not going to say I'm all in on the Reds because I do think with the holes that there still are, it's an 85 win team. But I mean, speaking of 2023, when we were, out there with Morg, that was Matt McLean's rookie season where he played incredible, batting 290, 50 RBIs, 16 bombs, 14 steals. That's a really good stat line to have as a rookie playing in a organization like Cincinnati that has really kind of needed some sort of a spark for a really long time. And Hunter Green's going to remain dominant. He's going to stay on top of his game this year. So I think this will be a really good season for the Reds. I don't know that I could see them winning this division, but they're still going to be, giving a run to whoever is ending up winning it, whether it be the Cubs and they develop, kind of like we're going to talk about later. But I think this could be a really good stepping stone for the Reds and a really good chance to kind of start trending up.
No, certainly, yeah, and I'd say that this team's probably 1 to 2 years away from serious contention of fighting for that wild card spot or even the divisional spot. And my analysis was pretty similar to yours, Slater, where they do have that electric young core with obviously a guy like De La Cruz, who is, I would argue, the most electric, most fun young guy to watch in baseball right now, as well as Spencer Steer, Matt McLean, obviously we touched base on, who provides that speed and pop. Biggest thing I'd say is, Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo, they have that frontline potential as long as they stay healthy. And then my concerns with the Cincinnati Reds is the high strikeout rates in the lineup. And it's common with young guys who want to be powerful like De La Cruz, but especially De La Cruz and some others just got to have better plate discipline.
I think you could probably say this about just about any team in the Central, but with the Reds, I feel like for the foreseeable future, they're in a wait and see, season by season kind of deal. Because it's like Slater kind of mentioned, a lot of people, including, Slater, were high on them last year, and then they just kind of underperformed a little bit. And I think that's just a thing with the young teams is there's clearly talent here. It's, just can they put it together? You almost have to wait and see with that. I do like the moves of bringing in an Austin Hayes to help out with the platoon. Just because guys like Fraley is a monster against righty. I mean, he's just the ultimate kind of platoon guy. And Hayes is the opposite way. I like moves like that, trying to fill holes with whether it be platoons. Wade Miley is going to get, probably 30 starts for them this year, which, I wish that guy just retired already. I'm about tired of him.
I didn't know he still
Yeah.
played baseball.
Yeah, he signed a minor league contract. He'll probably he'll find a way and he'll get some innings for his
always
team.
does.
I have not
always
heard
does.
that name in so long.
But like, I think the main thing why I see in the Reds is every year it seems like we see a young core like this that just takes that like just pops and takes that next step out of nowhere. Whether it be the Orioles recently, Diamondbacks, there's always that team. And I think like Tito Francona is like the guy that would get that out of this young core. And yeah, they underperformed last year, but to me, a big part of that underperforming was guys, big pieces like Friedel and Matt McClain being out. Just they really got hit by the injury like really bad last year, and against obviously that can creep back up with some guys. I'm hopeful if they stay healthy, that in that ballpark again, like you said, like Fraley's gonna crush like home runs. I think Austin Hayes' power compared like all those years he spent in Baltimore with that new left field wall where he couldn't hit a ball out at all in that monstrosity. Now he's in a hitter-friendly ballpark. You could see him get like 20 home runs, honestly, if he plays every day. So I really am hopeful about this Reds team. I really see a lot of potential. I do really like also the move to get Taylor Rogers in the bullpen to help Alexis Diaz. I really like this team.
Improving their depth was clearly like important to them this offseason with the moves of Hayes and Rogers and things like that. I think their depth certainly is better this year if they were to run into some injuries again. We'll just have to see. So now moving on to Party Pat's favorite team. He had the Rockies jersey on last week, but that's just, an homage to his hometown of out there in Colorado. But he's really all about the Cubbies, probably since right around 2016. I've been a Cardinals fan my whole life, but we won't get into that. We can move on to the Cubs. As a Cardinals fan, unfortunately, they have been making moves this offseason, and especially here, a couple more here recently. I think they see that nobody else is going to make moves. They're trying to take that leap up. When it was just Kyle Tucker, when that was like the only move was flipping Kyle Tucker for Cody Bellinger, I don't think that was nearly enough. I don't think Kyle Tucker is definitely better than Cody Bellinger. I don't think he is better enough to make that big of a difference. But now when they added Presley to the bullpen, some other stuff they've done, they're definitely seeing a chance to pounce to get to the top of the division with other teams laying low this offseason.
Yeah, I think I could even see a not deep but a solid playoff run from the Cubs this year. I think they have what they need if they can keep developing and kind of like you mentioned, Zach, kind of keep playing the field like they are in terms of bringing in talent. I think with their prospects, guys like Cade Horton are going to be really successful for him. He's the number 3 prospect right now, and I think he's going to have to play a pretty big role for them. And then, and I know Party Pat's going to touch on him a little later, but guys like Pete Crow Armstrong, who have really started to show out and have really started to show up and play baseball, despite what other NL Central fans might want him to do. But no, I think this team really has the impact. If guys like Horton can stay healthy, and if he can kind of maintain what he's got going, I don't know. I think this has the makings of a team that can be really good down the stretch if they can just keep going after the All-Star break, which for some reason teams in the NL Central right there after the All-Star break really get fired up. And I'm going to say that later when we talk about the Cards, but it's right there after the break when for some reason one team out of the NL Central always just goes on a nuts winning streak. And if that can be the Cubs this year, then I really think they're going to have poised to get into the playoffs and perform well. I'm not saying they're going to make it to the championship series, but they have a chance to really do some damage on the team that will.
Certainly. And one of the biggest things that I love about the Chicago Cubs, and one thing that I love about being a fan, is the way that they are able to utilize their farm system and hold on to those prospects, even if it's 3-4 years in the minors instead of like getting rid of them. I think that's a valuable thing that they do each year. of, holding playing their cards close to their chest, where they just kind of have been embracing a rebuild almost in the last couple of years, and you thought that they would finally make it into the playoffs last year. Unfortunately, they did not, but going into 2025, things are looking bright for the Cubs, I'd say. And so the biggest strengths, I'd say, is that addition with Kyle Tucker, one of the league's best lefty power bats. And he just adds that balance to the lineup that I think the Cubs were missing in 2023 and 2024. Another strength I'd say is the infield defense, and it's starting to remind me a little bit of the infield that they had in 2016. With right now you got Swanson and Horner.
Get that. Could you try again?
Swanson and Horner providing elite middle infield play, and that combo is just pretty elite. And do want to see a little bit more out of Swanson at the plate, but I mean you can't beat him at shortstop. As far as the bullpen goes, I see Justin Steele as a legitimate ace and a Cy Young potential winner after 2 back-to-back strong seasons. I know he battled a little bit of injury early in the 2024 season, but he's been such a good vocal leader for the Cubs, and that's exactly what you want out of a bullpen.
You mentioned their infield a little bit. Is Kelly still poised to be the catcher? Like, is that still going to be the catcher this year? Or
it's hard to tell.
I think the catcher and the two hot corners like Shaw and Bush, those are really your weak spots in that infield. I think Nico Horner and Dansby Swanson are incredible ball players on the defensive side. Like, I think that was a really good point. I think they are incredibly good, and they do remind me a lot of that 2016 team, like you mentioned. But in looking back on that 2016 team, they have to hold on to them, and they can't sell them away here when they start getting valuable to try to repeat success again. You know what I mean? I remember I went to Chicago a couple of years ago, and in Wrigleyville, they had shirts with the date and the exact time that the Cubs just sold. And just really emptied out, and that's crazy. I've never seen anything like that. So if they can get that success this year, I'm not saying they have to win a World Series, but I'm saying if they can start to hang on to that success and grow that, then they have the chance to be back to that sort of firepower that they were in the 2016 series.
Yeah, certainly. And I'd say that the thing that they did going from 2016 to 2017 and where they went wrong was they tried to go back to back. Instead of embracing, 2017, we will have a World Series hangover. So they just lost a lot of that core. And since then, it's, 9 years already since they were a serious contender and, a scary team in the MLB. And so that's why I'm really excited finally in 2025 to maybe see a little bit of light with that.
I think this year for the Cubs is going to be a little bit boom or bust, not in that they have to win or it's a bust, but more so I just mean they either could be really, really good or they could struggle a lot just because of where the holes are. Now the rotation, it's going to be great. They've got a number of really good pieces in that rotation. The bullpen, Presley helps a lot, but it still leaves some question marks for me. Can Brazier do what he did for the Dodgers? If so, then that's okay, but there's still some question marks there in the bullpen to me. And then it's what are you going to get from offensively from Swanson? Which guy are you going to get offensively? And then third base is a question mark. I don't see them running with Vidal Brujan very long. I imagine that's Matt Shaw's job to take.
Has to be.
But he's going to be a rookie, so who knows? So there's some question marks there. Pete Crow Armstrong, does he take the next step or not? If he does, then, if all those things go right for the Cubs, they're going to be really, really dangerous. If those guys underperform like they have in the past or, struggle as young players, in the case of Shaw and PCA, then it could be an issue. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, no, I think you guys have pretty much nailed it on the head. I think Matt Shaw truly, as of right now with how the roster is the X factor. He's a top prospect. They're hoping to get a lot out of him. And I think he can do it. But the other thing that's interesting about this team is that they're probably one of the most interesting teams as we go into spring training that still have the room to make moves. They're one of the teams that's in on Bregman. And I think if Bregman doesn't go to the Astros, I think he probably ends up with the Cubs, which would completely, I think, just really, this whole team, like, and how their outlook in the division would even go to another level from where it is at now, where they have a good mix of like veteran talent with that young talent to make a run for this division. I think they have that, and then they also have the prospects to where if they. We talked last episode about how the Padres are selling off. They have Dylan Cease, and they also have Michael King down the block. The Cubs have one of the top farm systems in baseball. So they definitely could trade for one of those guys and really elevate that rotation to make it like this team. Like if they make one or two more moves instead of just being a favorite to win this division, which I think they probably are right now, then you'd be talking about like a legitimate World Series contending roster, I think.
All right, and now moving on to my favorite team, the St. Louis Cardinals. Grew up just about an hour and 15 minutes away. Went to the ballpark a lot growing up. Big fan of the Cardinals. It's been pretty positive fanhood for most of my life. Got a couple World Series in, but it has been almost 14 years now since that 2011 season. And they've been content to make the playoffs every year and be bounced early. And the last couple of years, they haven't even made it to the postseason. And this year, they're not going to the postseason either, more than likely. They're going with the youth movement, they say. But then they still have Nolan Arenado on the roster, who is causing a logjam. Now Thomas Ajayce is going to have to play in AAA because Nolan Arenado's got to play third base. They still have Sonny Gray, Steven Matz, Miles Michaelis. So none of the young pitchers are going to get those opportunities. We've been bamboozled again into believing that we were going to get to see a young, fun roster like the Cincinnati Reds. Even if we were going to lose a lot of games, it would have been fun. Instead, we're going to get the same thing as last year, minus Paul Goldschmidt, America's first baseman. And now he's on Stokes' favorite team, the Yankees. I'm upset. I'm ready to be very upset. I hope we trade Nolan Arenado in the next week if it's going to happen. I think it's got to be before pitchers and catchers report. Otherwise, at that point, wait till the deadline. We can break down the roster. I'll let you guys get your thoughts and what you think about the roster, and I'll fill in what I feel as a Cardinals fan from there.
Yeah,
I think.
Oh yeah, you go first, Austin.
This is going to be the same season we've seen for however long. I don't think anything's changed. I think after the All-Star break, like I said earlier, the Cardinals will get hot. People will say they're the wild card team, and then they won't be. And we then we will have this exact conversation next year. Get rid of Arenado, please God. Sell him for what he's worth and get more players to fill so many of these obvious holes. And I don't know, hang on to younger players. They try to take, it's like the mid-market Yankees. Like they love signing old guys and hoping to God that they have a semblance of who they used to be for 6 months. They have to just give that up. They don't have the money to do that. They don't have the money or the draw to do that. I think they just have to get rid of some of the guys who want to leave, who don't want to be St. Louis Cardinals anymore, and use that money that you're bringing in to sign guys who need to prove that they belong in the MLB. And then from there, you can start to build your own sort of home base. But they're just not playing the field enough. They are treating this offseason like they are a much better team than they actually are.
Well, fun fact, 2 days ago, the Cardinals spent the first money they have at all on a 40-man rostered player. And that was a cash considerations trade for Michael Hellman, who has 10 Major League at-bats.
Never heard that name in my life.
And you never will again, probably.
Yeah. So do something. Do anything. Get anybody. Get anybody under the age of 30 that I've heard of.
I'm okay if they don't sign anybody. I am okay with this season being give Victor Scott 300 at-bats, give Jordan Walker 600 at-bats, give Nolan Gorman as many at-bats as you can, give Thomas Ajayce as many at-bats as you can. I'm fine with that. Find out
I
which
just
one of
think
these
that-
young guys are good, and keep them. And if they're not good, ship them off, and then you can fill the holes when you're ready to compete again. When Heim Bloom takes over.
I just think it's more proactive to start filling holes now as opposed to waiting to see who fades out.
Well, I think the idea of it is that our player development has been so shot for several years. You know, you can think of. I mean, why don't you show what jersey you're wearing, Slater?
Yeah, you got the Randy
Yeah.
jersey on
Our
today.
player development system of the past didn't think he was good enough, so they lumped him into a trade for like some shitty reliever or whatever it was.
What's and like, I guess I'll jump like with the Cardinals. Like, it feels like the Cardinals are good at identifying talent when it comes to like prospects and everything like that, but they are just absolutely god awful at actually developing these guys, and they
When Dylan
always.
Carlson was a prospect, we wouldn't trade him for Juan Soto, and then we had to trade him for a guy we DFA'd 2 weeks later, last deadline.
But I think I think this roster is just the baby of like the Cardinals with all these prospects, just trying to shove them into a window, like a championship window that probably wasn't there, and just really stunted their development. There's some guys like Mason Wynn played really well last year, and he looks like he's kind of made out of it. But this, the word the Cardinals keep using is opportunity. They want to give opportunities to guys like Jordan Walker. Like, regardless of what he does early on in the year, he could be batting like, a $180 in June. He's going to keep playing. They're going to see what they have in him. They're going to see what they have in Nolan Gorman, and like all these young guys, Ivan Herrera, Michael Ciani, and Victor Scott in center field. That's going to be kind of interesting to
Go ahead
see.
and take Michael Ciani right the hell out of that conversation. That guy is a fourth outfielder.
Well, I know. Like,
But
I'm Team Victor
Ollie
Scott, but
Marmol
I'm saying,
loves him. You get me fired up.
like,
about that, too.
we'll see.
Michael
like,
Ciani is going to be the everyday
are y'all-
of the Cardinals, and I can't stand it.
Well, I think that's the wrong move because Michael Ciani doesn't have nearly the ceiling that Victor Scott has, which I think is the whole point of the season for the Cardinals. Is you see what you have here. I think they just have to stay disciplined. That's the thing. They have to stay disciplined. Though honestly, what I'm afraid of is almost that there'll be like some like flashes early on, and the Cardinals will like go away with the logical thing to do right now, which is what they're doing, and seeing what they have in these guys, and that the Cardinals will start somewhat hot, and then they'll make a bunch of moves and try and fit guys,
Worst case scenario
into
for
holes
this
they shouldn't
season-
be in. Yeah.
Worst case scenario is we're like at the trade deadline, we're like 3 games above 500. Instead of trading Arenado, they like try to buy and then finish under 500 anyway. And I'm very scared. that
Wouldn't
that's
shock me.
It's totally within the realm of possibility. And if you're a Cubs fan like Pat, you just got to be sitting back and smiling. And that's what he's doing.
That's exactly what I'm doing right now. Well, I mean, you look at the Cardinals, and to the casual baseball fan, when you have a guy like Nolan Arenado paired with a guy like Paul Goldschmidt, you would want to say that that's just an elite duo. And maybe 5 to 10 years ago, the answer is yes. I mean, you're going to have a really good team around those two players.
And we still didn't
Exactly.
get the first round.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but the reality of it is both of those guys are getting older, and you start to see it, especially with Goldie. He's starting to show signs of aging. In addition, I'd say another big concern is the starting rotation. It's very shaky there, and if for some reason the Cardinals, like you said, Stokes, are doing something crazy at the second half of the season, you really have to put a lot of trust in that starting rotation. And you're really looking for bounce back years with guys like Nicholas, Flattery, and Matz, who, like I said, with Arenado and Goldschmidt, like a few years ago, that's a solid starting rotation.
Miles Michaelis might currently be the worst contract in baseball because he's so bad that you can't trade him, but he makes like $19 million a year, so you can't cut him either. So now he just has to go out there and throw 200 innings.
He's the innings eater.
How much longer are y'all locked in on him for?
This year, next year, I think.
Oh,
Well,
my God.
Well, I was gonna ask, like, how does it, like, obviously Sonny Gray at the top, who apparently
fine
doesn't
with
want to be
him
traded.
being-
So like,
Yeah, he didn't want to be traded. That's fine.
yeah, but like the rest of it to me is just like Palante had a pretty good year last year.
And he's
He
still
showed some
young. I like
signs.
Palante.
But like
I-
outside that, I mean, what are we doing? Pretty much.
Like Eric Fetty just needs to be traded because starting pitchers are in demand. He's at least solid. Like it's not like I'm like, oh, Eric Fetty sucks, get him off my team. It's just he doesn't make sense for what this roster is supposed to be this year. And right now, I mean, below average starting pitchers are getting like $10 million a year. Trade Eric Fetty for some prospects. Miles Michaelis is what it is. He's got too much seniority in the organization to be put in the bullpen probably. He probably just won't stand for it. And the Cardinals don't like to make players do what they don't want to do, which is stupid. Palante, I'm really excited for. I think he's really underrated. He's bad out of the bullpen, but he's really good as a starter. He's supposedly going to get the whole year to start this year. And then I want to see guys like Michael McGreevy, Gordon Graceffo, Cooper Jerpy, who is a first-round pick that they've been really weird about. He's got nasty stuff and a nasty arm angle, but he had elbow issues his first year in pro ball. And then last year he got shut down. He left to start. He did an interview a couple weeks ago, and he got asked, so did something flare up again? Did you have to have another surgery? He's like, no, I just felt some discomfort and told them, and then they just shut me down. So they're really doing weird things with him, but there's a lot of young starting pitching talent that deserves a chance. And instead, I'm going to have to watch Miles Michaelis and Steven Matz is going to get 10 starts and then get hurt. But Miles Michaelis is going to get 30 starts. It's ridiculous. Anybody else going to talk?
I was gonna say I thought we're I guess with the Cardinals, I don't know. Again, we've kind of just talked about it. It truly is just opportunity. Hopefully I think Jordan Walker's the X factor. I think he's the guy that they really, really want to see get back to kind of where he was.
He's still incredibly young, and I'm cautiously optimistic that he's been working with Brant Brown, our new hitting coach, a lot, and he speaks very highly of him. He was at the opening Winter Warm-Up press conferences. Jordan Walker was very excited to talk about his new swing. Now
Let's see. Yeah, I did see that.
it's a new swing, so
and
if it works, cool. But
And I heard the praise about Brant Brown, but obviously Brant Brown started off last year as the Mariners' offensive coordinator / hitting coach, whatever you want to call it. And obviously he got fired mid-season because the Mariners were just so god-awful on offense. Granted, that probably was not all his fault, but definitely, I think, played into it. From my research in the Cardinals going into this episode, people have had praise about Brant Brown. Brant Brown had a good track record before he came to the Mariners last year. Like most people on offense, once they come to Seattle, they just shit the bed and then leave and then go back to how they were.
sorry about it,
But,
Solano.
So, exactly. He'll be another guy. But Toronto, it is interesting. And hopefully they can move off Arenado. Arenado Red Sox trades have started hitting up. It'll be interesting to see what the return is for him if they do get it done.
Speaking of, I think Zach, if they do hold on to Arenado until the deadline, who do you go for? Like what move do you think realistically the front office makes for him? Like what is he worth compared to other players?
If he's still there and we have to wait to the deadline, it depends on what he does in the first half of the season. But he's not I don't know if he's a Gold Glove caliber defender anymore, but he's still really, really, really solid defensively. He's gonna hit for some pop. He's not a bad player. He's just doesn't fit what this roster wants to do, and he's getting older and getting a little bit worse each year.
And he's still got the money.
In the money, I want them, if they're going to trade him, whether it's tomorrow or in July, I want them to be willing to eat the part of the contract to get a good return. I don't care. Obviously I don't because I'm a fan and it's not my money, but I don't care about shedding the cap space if I'm only going to get like a 25-year-old starting pitching prospect back because a team had to take on this contract. Eat half the contract if you got to get a legitimate return. That's all I want. So we'll probably talk about the Cardinals I know we will when we get into our other segments later. There's a few of them on our list for Stay Hot and Pack Your Bags. But first, we're going to break down last year's division winners who almost made a bit of a postseason run. Well, they did make a bit of one, but ended up falling short of what they wanted when they lost to the Mets. That's, of course, the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah, like with the Brewers, I think they're a pretty good team. I don't think they'll reach. Like honestly, they're my regression candidate this year. I think I think they're definitely gonna fall back. I don't think they're gonna win this division. Obviously, I was completely wrong about them last year. I thought they were rebuilding last year. They were supposed to be kind of doing what almost like the Cardinals are doing last year, and just seeing what they had, guys, and just kind of popped and went together, and along with the rest of the division kind of falling by the wayside. But there's still pieces here that are good. Like Jackson Chourio obviously really stepped up into that role. When Yelich was playing, he was pretty good. William Contreras is one of the best catchers in baseball. There's a lot of guys, and I'm a big Freddie Peralta guy in pitching staff, but outside of that, it's just like, to me, this lineup and like even the rotation outside of Freddie Peralta and even the bullpens, Brewers always seem to put together a good bullpen. But I don't see the upside that you see with the Cubs, the Reds here. I think they're going to be a pretty good team, but I don't see them winning the division crown again, to be honest.
I agree. I don't see where, kind of like I mentioned with a couple other teams, where does the offensive true pop come from? Who's your day-to-day guy that is going to, get things started in tight situations? Pitching, I think they're fine. I think they're really good on pitching. And, I mean, I'll talk about that later, and I'm sure I'll get some people fired up with my takes on the Brewers' current pitching. I like guys like Aaron Ashby, who I know has been really plagued by injury, but last year in September alone, putting up 1.98, 20 strikeouts and 13 2/3. That's pretty solid, man, especially that late in the season and on that electric of a team. And he was, September wasn't an easy schedule for them. That was a really tough stretch for them down the road, especially that late in the season. And then the Brewers, who weren't expected to be good coming into last season, who then had to gear up and say, oh shit, we got to play in the playoffs and we got to be a real MLB organization for the first time in a while. I think that's a good look for them. And I think here in a couple of years, maybe if they can, it's just the problem in the NL Central is, guys, there's just not enough young talent to go around. Honestly, there's not enough good offensive young talent to go around. And that's really kind of hitting every NL Central team, it seems like. And I don't know, man. You just have to find a way to shake it up in the lineup. I don't really see who they have of worth to trade at the deadline. Like maybe if Cortez doesn't shake out, then get rid of him for something. But man, like I just don't see a way that they could make anything happen this season. Like they if they bring back some of the fire they had from last year, maybe. I'm just not super impressed with them at the moment.
Yeah, certainly, and like you said, Stokes, I mean, they're fine pitching-wise. They got, obviously, Corbin Burns, who leads the rotation, has proved to be one of MLB best, as well as Freddie Peralta, who, when Peralta's on, I mean, he can be the best pitcher in the MLB. But the biggest thing is the offense lacks that true superstar that they had in the late 2018 to 2020s. They had Yelich, but he's not at that MVP level caliber player anymore. So that's just the biggest thing that they're missing is offensively. They need, that superstar to really get the fire going when the pitching's on.
The Brewers are one of these teams with one of the more frugal ownership and front offices in the league, and they don't get hate about it as much because they've had, what the Cardinals had, the devil magic the Cardinals had for most of my life is seemingly flip to the Brewers last season included, I mean, they just had guys that are just nobodies producing for them. And so, they've been winning. They've been toward the top of the division the last several years, so people haven't really noticed. But they don't spend money. They spent money to re-sign Christian Yelich, and since then, they don't do it. And, this team overperformed last year, and they're pretty much just running it back this year. Christian Yelich, another year older. Rhys Hoskins, another year older. Now, with that, Chourio, a year older, going to be really good. Contreras going to be really good. But it's just not enough, I don't think, especially offensively.
And I think it's a thing too, and it's probably the right move for the Brewers, because I think we talked last episode about the Giants and that one random 2021 season and how they just kind of thought they had a new window. So I think it is. I think I would caution the Brewers about thinking oh, we made the playoffs last year, we were a 90-win team. We have a window now around guys like Chourio and stuff like that. I think they probably know with their roster right now that they're not at that level yet, and with Austin talking about guys to trade and stuff like that. I don't think they should be trying to trade guys that are younger and have value, whether it be a guy like Bryce Terang or anyone like that, to try and get a veteran that might help them out a little bit when really they're not that close to a World Series, if we're being honest.
They also have a lot of guys in the outfield that are supposed to be really good, and that if you ask a Brewers fan, will tell you that they're really good, but have yet to really prove it yet. So, we'll see how Garrett Mitchell shakes out if he stays healthy. Brewers fans love him some Sal Frelick, and I'm yeah, he's a good defender, but I don't care. But we'll see. If those guys take jumps, maybe that could help them stay afloat, but I just don't see it this year. I think they are almost guaranteed to be third place.
I think so too. I think they're just a standard 81 and 81 team. That's it.
All right, so now it is time to get into the patented Pack Your Bags watch. Again, the father of the Pack Your Bags watch, Andrew Slade, obviously member of the podcast. This is going to be a big thing, I promise. It's going to be a big deal. Last week, got a lot of good hits in on the Rockies through it this week. We'll see who the hits are taken at. Stokes, why don't you start us off? Who's your Pack Your Bags player for the NL Central this year?
Okay, so I'm not going to rag as hard because I know this guy is a little more widely accepted than Kyle Farmer. So I'm not going to be as mean, but Pack Your Bags to my man Nolan Gorman. Fantastic player as a rookie. Good Lord, that guy was good as a rookie. Last year, man, what happened? Injuries, I get it. But at the same time, if he does not perform this season, and this is one of the only times I'm going to say this year, if this guy does not hit well this season, it's over. You got to look elsewhere. You can't right now, like we talked about earlier. They're not in the position to give guy cut after cut after cut after cut. This is his season to figure it out. You have to be on the ready for him to suck, and for you immediately need to start looking elsewhere. I just don't think this franchise has the room to spend 3 or 4 years waiting for Nolan Gorman to be good, 3 or 4 more years waiting for him to really pop off and have his rookie season again. Now, about his rookie season, most of his, I think it was 82% of his at-bats in 2022 were against righties. So we're talking about a .1 OPS higher just off that. Rookie stats are a little inflated for him. So I think that's something to look at when you talk about how good that season was. Last season, I just didn't find anything to really hang on to. I mean, coming to the plate 464 times for 59 hits. You know, I mean, that's, I don't know. Sorry for 96 hits, which is still not better, but, you know, I just don't see how much longer we can wait for him to be good. And so much of their stock is invested in him right now. when do they cut the line off? When is it time to say, okay, I'm done waiting on him to be good. Now I have to go do this whole process again because I've wasted all this time. It has to be this season. If he does not perform, if he's not one of the best hitters on the lineup, I'm not talking an average season. I'm not saying, getting swept under the rug with like a batting 275. No, he needs to come out and hit really well, and he needs to make it known why he deserves to continue to be placed in this high of a position in a starting lineup. So it's this or bust, man. Like, you cannot continue to give this guy chances, and it is 2025 for him, or he will be in a different uniform in 2026.
So, before I defend my Pookie Bear, Nolan Gorman, right, I will say, by definition, for what we're doing, for the preseason Pack Your Bag watch, he's a correct pick, right? Because, the Cardinals have somewhat, as much as said, what you just said. He's going to play all year long. Doesn't matter how bad. If it gets bad, it doesn't matter. He's going to get the whole year to figure it out. And I'm on board with that. And why I think that will benefit him is Nolan Gorman is the streakiest of streaky players. He has stretches, and even last year, as bad as his all-around season stats look, there was a month or so stretch in there. I think it was around June. It was either May or June, where he was literally the hottest hitter on the planet, and he was hitting home runs every single day. And that's just who he has been his entire career. Through the minors, you look at his minor league stats, it's the same deal. He's going to have 2 or 3 months where he's on fire and playing like a literal MVP type power bat, and then he's going to have 2 or 3 months out of the season where he just strikes out every time he's up there chasing the high fastball. This is the season to show that if he can be hot more often than he's cold, and if he can, then I'm fine with that. This is baseball. He doesn't have
but you're betting a lot. Like,
also. He's only
streaky
25.
players. Streaky player, yeah, I get that, and
That's allowed.
he's young, and sure, he's got a lot of more time. It is, and you're right. But look at how many other guys in the league are streaky players who could be MVP contenders if they were like that all season. Or look at how many other guys do that. Like, I don't see why Nolan Gorman's any different.
Yeah, he doesn't have to be. Yeah, he's a first round pick. He was like top, I think he was 12th overall. But he doesn't. It's baseball. He doesn't have to be MVP hit fourth every day. But as long as he can be an above-average hitter more times than he's not, he can fit into a lineup and be a very productive piece as one of the top power-hitting second basemen in all of baseball. I think every good lineup, if we're going to be good again in the next few years, is okay having a guy that's going to strike out 200 times if he hits 30 to 40 home runs. That's modern baseball. It's just, again, this is the season. Which are you going to get more of? Which streak lasts longer, the hot or the cold? That's the important part.
I could see it not even lasting the season though. Like, I could see if we're getting into end of May and the dog days of summer, I could see him gone, man. Like, I just don't think. I think if he doesn't perform well, like if he's not a good ball player at the beginning of the season, he's gone. I could see where they would give him the whole year, and maybe that's just like logical thinking.
I think if they're gonna stay true to what they want this season to be, and because of the type of player that it's not a secret. Like, they've seen it since he was 18. You're doing injustice if you don't give him the entire season, in my opinion. Because if he gets off to a cold streak and you trade him, and then he'll end up on the Tampa Bay Rays and hit 40 home runs for him, because that's just what happens with the Cardinals. But you can't be surprised at that point, because you can't trade a guy like him if he gets off to a cold start in this type of season. If you're gonna already pretty much saying you're not gonna contend, give him the whole season and give him a chance to show that the good can outweigh the bad. Slater was begging me to let the Cardinals trade the Mariners, knowing that.
Well, he had a collapse like he was with the Mariners, pretty much. I mean, but I am bullish on Nolan Gorman. We've kind of touched on the 2023 season, and like you guys have said before, I think Nolan Gorman fits the bill of what we're doing here with Pack Your Bags in preseason to a T, like you guys said. like I said, I'm bullish on him. 2023, 27 home runs, had an OPS plus of 116. Again, was one of the best hitting second basemen in baseball. Versus last year, an OPS plus of 85. Only hit. I mean, he still hit. Let me see, 19 home runs, which is for 85 OPS plus. Hitting 19 home runs is actually pretty surprising. It's just mainly like the peripheral numbers and the data analytics on Nolan Gorman look really good from the offensive side. It's mainly the results have to show. If you're going to play second base and you're going to be a bad defender, you have to hit. To where you have to be that 116, and I think based on the analytics and stuff we've seen with his bat speed, his exit velos, his barrel percentage, he has the ability to be a 120, 125 like OPS plus guy. But with how bad last year was, and just I think he has to like you guys have said, he has to prove it, and I'm hopeful that he will. But we'll see.
I just think I still think we're banking on a lot. I'm okay with giving him the whole season. I just think this is still so much of a faith thing. I just don't see the point.
I don't think it's a faith thing when you've seen the 2023 season. We've seen, the 2022 is, whatever. He was a 22-year-old rookie, and they were weird about not letting him hit against lefties, which is bad when you're trying to develop a player. I think the 2023 season was good. The 2024 season was bad. Okay, count that as a wash. He's going to be 25 this year, and let's see if you're not going to contend anyway. I think that's totally fine.
I'll agree that he hasn't really had the chance to.
I also don't
fully play. And
sorry to cut you off. I just don't think last year us overperforming in the first half of the year as a team did him any favors, because it made Ollie Marmol feel like, because that's been the thing with Gorman. When he's bad, he's not going to get back to hot if he's sitting on the bench, which is concerning, I suppose, when you want to make the playoffs. And how long do you let a guy ride at sitting 8 in the lineup, striking out every time, and then hitting a home run if he's not? But the way it's been with him, when he's hot, hit him 4th. When he's cold, hit him 8th. He'll figure it out again. But last year they didn't feel like they could afford to let him ride it out. So then he sits on the bench, and that's not helping anything. And then by the end of the year, they just sent him down to AAA. So they've got to stick true to their word if they want to see what they've got in them, I think.
I agree. I'll say that I think they should, define what they want for him now while it's early in his career and the season, I guess. Define what you want from him, and again, or just get rid of him. If I just think he is touted to be way too good to be a guy who bounces between AAA and the majors. I don't think he's going to this year at all, but I don't know. If that's your game plan for him, then let him keep developing and stop making him fail in the big leagues, and just let him go down and hit really well. If he's a guy that's streaky, and if he's a guy that performs good when he's hot and bad when he's not, let him be hot in AAA. Let him really go down there and just rake the ball in AA and AAA, and then bring him up later in the season. But forcing him out there and like we talked about earlier, shoving all these players into this championship window that shouldn't be there. I just don't think it works in the long run, and I don't think it works for him. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I think he would be fantastic, maybe on another lineup, in a team that's a little more established. But now you're relying on him to do a lot of the establishing when his career itself has not reached that point yet.
It's gonna be interesting to watch. I think that's for sure. Especially as a Cardinals fan, we'll have to see. And just to get it out of the way, I think we should talk about the other Nolan that is a St. Louis Cardinal, my pack your bags player, Nolan Arenado. And it's not even that I think he's so bad that I want his bags to be packed. We've talked about it. We've hashed it out a little bit already earlier, talking about the Cardinals roster as a whole. He just doesn't fit what the organization's going with this season. and the future. I mean, last year, which was, everybody said, a pretty down year. I mean, pretty universally, people have said that. He still had a 101 OPS plus. He was still, at the very least, average. And even had 2.5 WAR, which is, not what you want to see from him. You want the 2022 version when it was 7.7. He's still a solid player. It's just not right for what the Cardinals need anymore. His window is past for us.
Yeah, with Arenado, you pretty much said it. Nolan Arenado is still a productive player. He still can definitely help out someone looking to contend, like the Red Sox or the Mariners or whoever. He's still a productive third baseman. The glove isn't platinum like it used to be, but it's still a good glove over at third base, and it's still a slightly above average bat for the most part. It's mainly just the salary, and that's the main reason Cardinals want to get rid of him, along with opening up opportunities to more of their young guys. It just doesn't really make sense for the Cardinals to hold on to him anymore. We've kind of already talked about that. Like you said, the Cardinals just need to get rid of him now as soon as possible to a team that makes sense, like the Red Sox, and just move on.
Absolutely, and I'm from Colorado, and he was obviously my favorite player with the Rockies during his tenure there. And at the end of his career, he will be a Hall of Fame baseball player, and he'll go down as one of the greatest third basemen of all time. But if, like we've been saying over and over again, if the Cardinals want to embrace a rebuild, they got to get rid of him.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when he was in Colorado and people were saying he was the next A-Rod, like he was the real deal there in the younger part of his career. And kind of like you guys have said, I think it's time to let the kids play, and it's time to let him go. I mean, he could do what most Cardinals do and come to New York and, maybe see a playoff run, or he could, I don't know. I think it's time for him to just find the team to play for a few years, make a bunch of money, hang it up. You're going to the Hall, man. You have the defensive stats. You're going. So just ride your career out, man. Like, send him off. Let him go right off into the sun. He has no ties to St. Louis. Like, he does because he's been there for a while. But, like, past that, he wasn't a career guy. He wasn't drafted. He wasn't, raised in St. Louis from what I know. So get rid of him. Let him go. Let him walk. Just get as many young prospects as you can to fill out the rest of the infield and the rest of the lineup. I just think it's time. It's time to part ways with him. And it's hard, everybody loves the guy, but it's just time to move on.
So next up for the Pack Your Bags watch, let's send it over to Mr. Pat Kennedy, who I think has one of the more interesting ones on this list. I'm interested to hear what you got to say about him.
Yeah, of course. And so my Pack Your Bags watch isn't necessarily a Pack Your Bags watch. It's more a figure it out offensively. And so Turang, obviously coming off of an excellent 2024 defensively as well as base running, had 50 stolen bases and a about 990 fielding percentage. The reason you do not hear more about this guy is because he's not consistent at the plate. And yes, he did put up a 250 average in 2024. However, the second half of the season, he was very, very streaky. And he finished with a below average WRC plus of 87 and an OPS of 665, which obviously indicates limited power, which goes into my next point. His hard hit rate was just 32%, which is also below the MLB average, which obviously limits the extra base potential. And with a guy who has that speed, you want him on second base. And so if he could get on second base a little bit more consistently, he'll generate runs for a team that needs runs with a good bullpen, just to give that bullpen a good pillow. In addition to a very high ground ball rate, which it does work for a fast guy, but his ground ball rate is around 50%. And so At this day and age, launch angle is kind of everything, especially with guys throwing harder. If you put the ball on the ground, I mean, defenders are just going to eat it up and throw you out. And so I just think that his second half struggles in 2024 at the plate might like leak into 2025. And if that's the case, offensively, like when you're not consistent offensively, that sometimes can play on the other side of the ball defensively, where you're just kind of still mentally boggled over your last at bat, and then he might start to make a couple more errors this next year. And so, like I said, he's not a bad player, but I just think he really does need to make the adjustment against major league pitching. And if he doesn't, I mean, what value does he really bring to the Milwaukee Brewers?
Yeah, I will say, like, I do like Turang. And it's a lot of, with, the things Pat said, the things he does well, the Gold Glove last year, the 50 stolen bases. Turang is, like, a valuable player, but I think Pat is right that the bat definitely leaves a lot to be desired. Like he said, the OPS plus of 85, the WRC plus of, I believe, 87. But he's an elite defender. Like, he has the speed. I think it's mainly you just want his bat to be at league average. You want the OPS plus. You want the WRC plus at 100. You want him to almost be like the bat that like Nico Horner has for the Cubs. Like, you want to be like that. Like, you want to be an average bat with like a little bit of upside. And then like Turang is better than Nico Horner on the speed side, on the defensive side. Like, that's the thing, to have an OPS plus of 85, but you still end up with a WAR of like 4.7 is truly like that just shows how good he was at everything except for, at the plate, like just being below average.
Exactly. And I mean, he only had a on base percentage of 300. And for a fast player, he needs to get on base a lot more. Especially, like I said, he's just reducing scoring opportunities that way for a guy who can steal 1 to 2 bases every time he gets on first. And so what I think he needs to do is work deeper counts, have a little bit more discipline. And so getting on base a little bit more might help him figure out a little bit more offensively.
Yeah, I think in today's day and age, obviously everybody kind of needs to slug a little bit, but even like the guy with Turang and just how he fits in with the Brewers roster, and we talked about the Brewers earlier, if they want to take, if they want to stay towards the top of the division, they're going to have to find some surprises on offense. And, they've got, obviously, Contreras and Churio, whether I think those guys will probably bat like 2-3 in the lineup, and then Hoskins, there's going to be Hoskins, he's going to have some pop. So they really, if they want to be a contender in this division, they need a guy like Bryce Turang with that speed to be able to be an old school leadoff type where he just gets on base, still second, next thing you know, he scores. But you got to get on base. You got to get on base at a higher 300 clip if you want to do that.
That is exactly what I was about to say. Like, he is like definition, like Derek Jeter type leadoff guy. Bloop single king, you just need him on. When he's on, we're fine. Getting him there, it's like Jazz Chisholm a couple years ago. He could not get on base, but when he did get on base, it was dangerous. Same with like D. Gordon. It's just these guys who are just such problems on the base paths, especially as your leadoff guy. If you're, I don't know, top of the ninth and you just need somebody to get moving and you need some fire, that's the guy you want to get that bunt or get that, accidental, swing single. But you need to branch it out more than that, you know what I mean? Like, he can't just be like, is he going to accidentally get on base and then be productive? Man, I just think there's so much potential there that they could hang on to him for a really long time, but if you don't develop, then it's kind of the same thing that we've been talking about with a lot of these guys. Like, how long can you wait? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's exactly why I had him as my pack your bags watch this week.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see. I think I might later look like what his his swing choices are. Like, if he's just chasing too much or if he's not taking enough pitches, why that OBP so low. I'm interested to kind of see if there's anything there that he could adjust.
And maybe it's the organization, and I hate to always say that, and I do say that a lot, but maybe he's just not a fit there. You know what I mean? Like, I do not know the first thing about the hitting around him as far as like who the hitting coach is and what they're looking like for spring training. Because frankly, I watch the NL Central the least, even though it's the division that gets televised the most where I'm at. But I think maybe it's just where he's at and the location. Maybe he's one of those guys that you trade away because he's mediocre, and then he all of a sudden figures it out and can start just roping the ball. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's not. But stop waiting to find out.
All right, and now we'll wrap it up with the father of the Pack Your Bag segment, Andrew Slade. Who do you got?
Yeah, I'm pretty proud. Like, I think mine this week is like almost the definition of Packer backs. It's Jose Trevino. I think Jose Trevino just stinks. Like, I think we all think the 2022 like fluky first half with the Yankees, where he was pretty good. It was fun. He was new, and like it seems like every year we have some Yankee like that just plays pretty well, and Yankee fans just like love him and just push him to all these awards and stuff like the All-Star game he made that year that he probably didn't deserve. Turns like Jose Trevino, like last year he was exposed. He's like a noodle arm. People literally just stealing bags left and right on him. He's not a good defensive catcher, really. Like when it comes to like being able to hold runners, he is one of the worst at now. He can still do things. Yeah, he can still do things like he can manage a pitching staff. He can frame and stuff like that, but. Then, like, I mean, the bat is also, it's like he's swinging with, like, a pool noodle. He literally can't do anything. Even though the Reds are, like, a hitter-friendly park, he's not going to do anything there. Right now, he's the backup catcher is Tyler Stevenson. I don't think that lasts. I think he ends up, like, he's going to be a guy in, like, a year or two we'll see playing the Caribbean Series, and we'll be like, oh, yeah, remember Jose Trevino? Like, that guy was fun. That's it. I think Trevino is just a bad player, and I think the Reds will quickly move on from him as their backup catcher. And yeah,
Well,
I'm so glad that you decided to pick Trevino for this, and I've really been wanting to talk shit on Jose Trevino for a long time. I've seen some bad catchers for the Yankees. The guys in pinstripes, there have been some great ones, and there has been Jose Trevino and Francisco Cervelli. Guys who I would rather die than watch play at times. But then, he hits like 6 home runs in 2 weeks, and he just gets that Yankee magic. Now, I could steal a base off of him, is the unfortunate thing. You're absolutely right, Slater. We're going to see him playing with, Robinson Cano here in a couple of years. Get rid of him. He needs to go figure it out in the minor league system. Now, he will inevitably, and I know this for a fact, he will get traded and he will go hit the ball really hard for another team for 3 months, and then we will never, ever hear the name Jose Trevino again. That's what I knew that was going to happen in New York. I figured it would have happened sooner. I figured the minute he left New York that I would never have to talk about him again. But here he is starting. I wanted to pick him for mine, but you got him sooner is the only reason I didn't get a chance to bitch about him. So I'm taking this opportunity. He was the worst for the Yankees at the time, and he shouldn't even be. He should be a backup pinch hitting catcher for some poverty franchise, which maybe he is. But good God, just stop getting him to put gear on. He could shift him to play second or something. I don't know. Anything that doesn't mean he has to throw the baseball hard.
He doesn't swing and miss a whole lot, but the bat just isn't that great. And from a backup catcher, you think a lot of backup catchers, they don't hit well. That's just how it is. But like a guy that, if you're a pitcher and the guy gets on first, you're like, I might as well have just had allowed like a double. Like this guy's on second base already. Like, imagine like Pat as a pitcher. Again, you're playing with a catcher who like you let a guy with a bloop single on. It's like no, I got a guy on second base pretty much already. Because this guy is just a noodle arm going to bounce it into second base. Like there's just no chance we're going to get him. It just It's brutal.
You said something
Exactly.
interesting there about being a backup catcher. I'd rather kill myself than be a backup MLB catcher. There's no other way out. That is a sign that you need to, as I said about Kyle Former last week, find a hobby. There's no fate worse than being a backup catcher on a little league team, on a high school team. It doesn't matter, dude. If you're the backup catcher, you're the backup catcher for a reason. There's a reason they haven't tried you at another position. Pack it up, man. I'm so glad I got to have this. This has been weighing on me for a long time.
See, I disagree.
Exactly.
I think the backup catcher is probably the best job in the world behind backup quarterback because you make at least a league minimum. Trevino's probably going to make $1 million or $2 and not have to do anything. But
That's true.
not to rehash, I will just say I think that was it was fun, it was cool, whatever, haha. Jose Trevino is an all-star, whatever. I think the point was that he's fine. He's, a couple years ago you would think that's a prototypical backup catcher. Everybody loves him. He's great with the pitching staff. He's a good clubhouse guy and he's a good defender. But once somebody figured out that he wasn't a good defender, he can frame, but that's going to go away in 3 years when we have the robo ump anyway. And the only thing that's going to be that matters at catcher defensively is if you have a strong arm. I don't know who the first team was to figure out, wait a minute.
It literally was just out of nowhere last year. Teams literally just started stealing, and they're like, wait a minute, this guy, cannot. It's almost probably with, first guy to realize that John Lesser couldn't throw over to first. You just keep inching off, and you're like, holy shit, this guy just can't do it.
He was, afraid.
Exactly. It's the same thing with Jose Trevino. Just be like, this guy can't get the ball to second base. I can literally just walk over to second base practically.
I watched Daniel Vogelbach absolutely swipe third on a dropped pitch. And you're telling that guy is making you. Trevino made Vogelbach look like D. Gordon, and he was huffing and puffing to third, and it was not even close. He had him by 2 steps. He was 2 steps on the bag before the throw finally got there from the sack and a string tied around it that he's using to throw the ball down there.
Yeah. And, catcher is a position that if you are elite on defense, you can get away with the stats that Jose Trevino has. And just stick him in that 9 hole because that glove behind the dish and that arm is a lot more valuable for a lot of teams. But with the stats that he put up in 2024, in addition to where he's at defensively, it's just like you said, Stokes, get a hobby.
Now it is time for the last segment of the podcast where we like to finish on a positive note. It is the Stay Hot watch this upcoming season for the 2025 NL Central. And again, in the preseason, it can be a little bit different. It could be people still that you just want to stay hot from last season, or it could be potential breakout players. When we get in season, it'll be more just who's hot right now. But for now, it's up to interpretation a little bit. And we're going to start out with my man drinking the Michelob Ultra down there in the corner, Party Pat. Who you got for this season?
I got none other than Pete Crow Armstrong of the Chicago Cubs, and I was recently fortunate enough to acquire his rookie card from the 2024 season.
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
Get to lift it up when you're done.
a gift from my sister's boyfriend Jordan. So thank you, Jordan. So I think this is a card that will appreciate. Especially this year, I think that PCA will have a breakout year. Looking at PCA as a player, he is a defensive excellent player. He showed impressive metrics such as outs above average at plus 14. And so he is just a menace in the outfield. Base running wise, he stole 27 bases, and that's pretty good. Granted, he did not start every single game this year. And so if he starts a lot more consistently, I think he could be a guy who will steal 50 to 60 bases. He does offensively, I think, could be a little bit more consistent. However, he has shown flashes of that where second half of the season, he did have a lot more home runs, showing a little bit more power, which is what we saw of him in the minor leagues a lot. And so he's a guy who I've been really excited to see come up, like I said, out of that really powerful Cubs farm system. And a guy who I really, really enjoy watching. And I was very fortunate as well to see his debut late in 2022 at Coors Field. So that was also very cool. And so, yeah, Pete Crow Armstrong, I think he is the face for the future of the Cubs.
Yeah, I hate Pete Crow Armstrong, and that's just I don't like how I just don't like the way he looks. I think he looks disgusting as a human being. I think that he is a very cocky player, which probably has something to do with being raised by an actress of a mother. You know, he's probably never had to want for anything. But he is probably going to be pretty good. He's got to improve hitting-wise, but he is young enough with the defense in center field that you're not super worried. But again, I think he's one of those players that if the Cubs want to take the jump to first in the division, is going to have to hit a little bit. He showed some pop potential last year, but overall, you know, like he had an 88 OPS plus, not good enough. But I think he'll probably be fine, and it's going to piss me off because I just get annoyed watching Pete Crow Armstrong play baseball.
I'm a big PCA
change your
fan,
number
dude. I
is
like that guy.
Like if PCA is like fun to watch because like he's truly like right now he is elite, like 99th percentile in everything until he picks up the bat. Like, like once he picks up the bat, there's concerns. Like he's second percentile in chase percentage, 18th in whiff percentage. You know, whiff percentage at 41.4%. Like there's concerns there. He's almost like, you know, it's almost similar conversation how we talk about Bryce Terang's bat. I think if Pete Crow Armstrong can just take more pitches and we can just see more of those like power flashes that we've already kind of seen and everything like that.
Again, this is Miles Michaelis. Every at bat, he hit 50 homers this season.
No, exactly. He just needs to he needs to face that Cardinals pitching staff like way more, and like he'll be locked in. But no, like again, he is a elite defender in a premier position, center field, and he runs the bases incredibly well. Terrell will be really interesting to see if he can bring it along. The bat just has to come along and try and get because he had 85 OPS plus, I believe. Really interesting player. I do again. If you can just get anything better out of that bat, like there's a lot of like elite potential here.
Yeah, and similar to what I was saying about Terang,
I mean, that's just
Machine's showing a picture of him.
Don't you just want to punch that guy in the throat? Yeah, I know you can't really see
Yeah.
it, but look him up.
I mean, similar to what I was saying about Terang, if he can start to work counts a little bit deeper, and I mean, he is a young player too, where he is adjusting to that major league pitching. But I mean, he's into his sophomore season now, where he should start to do that a little bit more. And I think if he does that, he'll start to get a lot more hitter friendly counts, and show out a little bit more like he does against the Cardinals. And I actually got to see him hit 2 home runs at Busch Stadium when I visited in July, and so.
Yeah, because Miles Michaelis is pitching.
Exactly, and so he's just a guy. I don't know, maybe because I've seen him twice live, one for his debut and the second time he got to do that. Just a guy, I might have rose-colored glasses for him, but he's pretty electric, and he just represents the new style of baseball. He is cocky, however, that's just where baseball is going, is those flashy types of players, and I think Pete Crow Armstrong is the flashy Cubs player, and that is exactly what the Cubs need, especially with a new team that actually has a legit chance to obviously win the division title and make a run for the playoffs this year.
I think he's a guy that's like the epitome of what a lot of the NL Central is dealing with. I mean, we've talked about it. I think every team in the NL Central has 1 to 2, if not more, guys in the PCA set of circumstances where they're young, They've shown potential. They're supposed to be really good. And now it's just 2025 is a year to see which of those guys are really good. He fits into that category, and there's plenty in the NL Central. And I think over the next couple of years, out of the group of players from each team, the team that has their guys be who they're supposed to be is going to be the team that's going to rise to the top eventually.
That's the picture you want to look at, Machine.
Oh yeah.
I don't.
He isn't John Jay though.
He's
Machine.
not, and he never will.
Dude, respect that name, man. Respect the name.
He will never be John Jay, who is now on the Cardinals coaching staff this year. Fun fact.
John Jay and Lucas Duda, forever baseball players.
Certainly were. All right, so Stokes, you're up next. I think I
Okay.
accidentally had already gone out of order after we talked about it. Second
Hey, it
before.
happens, man.
Time for you to get lit up by the rest of the pod, I think.
Okay, so Nasty Nestor is on the Stay Hot watch. Now let me elaborate a little bit. There are admittedly two versions of Nestor Cortez. You have Nestor Cortez Jr., who goes 14-12 with a 4.09. Not going to talk about that. But then you have Nasty Nestor, who goes 12-4 with a 2.44 in 28 starts back in the 2022 All-Star campaign. That he almost, I will say, maybe not come close, but he was in the mention for a Cy Young that season. I think he will be a career small to mid-market size number 2 in the rotation guy. My reasoning for that is because this performance, though both of those I just read, are in maybe what some people might argue the toughest division to pitch in, because that is where most of your star hitters are going to be. Most of your powerful lineups are there. So he was throwing against the Orioles. He was throwing against the Rays when they had a couple of really good seasons. The Red Sox have always been really potent on offense. The the Blue Jays. He's a guy that was that consistent against that tough of competition. So I think now he's taking a little bit of a step down, and he's going to be even better. He's going to have the Yankee syndrome, or the post-Yankee syndrome, where it's his first season away from the pinstripes. He may win a Cy Young this year, just because of that. There's some weird magic that goes with that, and we see it year after year when they get rid of somebody and they can just either tear the cover off the ball, or like Aroldis Chapman, revive your career for a little bit, go win a World Series. But Nestor, he has all the elements. He's competitive. He has things he needs to work on. He needs to stay healthy. After coming off, I think it was, I had it written down because I knew I wouldn't remember. His rotator cuff. That's right. He needs to stay healthy. He's, last season getting 30 starts out of him was surprising and a lot. I just think it's going to be a season of, can he develop the pitches that he's throwing and stop doing this weird Nestor Cortez stuff as much and relying on it as much, like twirling around when you're about to throw. He needs to start developing things to overcome that and try to stop getting this weird edge. His fastball sucks. I get that. I don't know. He's tough. I love him. I love the guy to death. Maybe it's just me wanting him to be dominant, but I think all the pieces are there for him to be, with the Brewers, one of the best number 2 guys in the MLB.
Well, let me jump in real quick to almost help Austin here. You did say this fastball sucks, and it definitely seems like when you think of Nestor Cortez, like watching him and everything like that, you think his fastball sucks. But on pure fastball run value on MLB Statcast, Nestor Cortez actually has one of the more valuable fastballs. Surprisingly, I think it's just deceptive in how it comes out of his hand and the ride on it he gets. That I think it was 2021 or 2022. He had 100 percentile fastball run value, and even last year in a down year it was 90th percentile, to where he gets value out of it. I think Nestor. I'll just continue my thoughts on Nestor. I think Nestor, I don't think he's a number 2 starter. I think he's a 4-starter, like a outside. I think he's a 4-starter, like a fringe playoff rotation guy, maybe for a playoff team. But I think like on the other hand of the fastball, like the breaking run, like the breaking pitch run value he's pretty consistently like bottom 20%. Like he is not good at in that way. But I will say it definitely like Mr. Cortez. I think is a decent MLB starter for a competing MLB team. I think we're all just like locked in on the last time we saw him, where that ball still hasn't landed from Freddie Freeman, and we all just had that in our head of that. There's a baseball in orbit somewhere from Nestor Cortez, and
I'm always been one to say the numbers don't lie. But he gets outs, man. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm not putting him in the likes of Greg Maddux.
Yeah. He doesn't walk guys. Also, yeah,
he does not walk guys, man.
Yeah.
He gets guys out, and what more can you ask? Like, sure, I will meet you in the middle and say that I could see him being a productive number 3. I really just don't think they put him as far down as 4. I think that's going to be your number 2, number 3 later in the season. He gets outs, he's productive even when he's not, even when he gives up a lot of hits, he still can get you out of a jam if you just really need him to. Don't ever bring him in out of the bullpen because it's a bad move. Brian Cashman has something wrong. I hate to see him leave the Yankees because he was, everybody loves watching him throw, but I think this is going to be a good move for him going into the Central, into some smaller markets and really able to tear it up there. I think he was just so overpowered with the other pitchers on the Yankees starting 5 at the time. Say what you will. Living in the shadow of Garrett Cole and who the Yankees thought Carlos Rodon was going to be. And then even in the dumpster fire that was the Stroh show for a little bit there, I think he was just so overwashed, and I think he just didn't have a chance. And so now I think in a organization where he can really take that next step and be really dominant, he's going to fit that role. And fuck it, man, say what you will, he's the number 2 come the end of the season.
Well, let me break it down for you this way, Mr. Stokes. First of all, he's 30. I don't know that he's going to be developing into a dominant pitcher out of nowhere. Second of all, I'm going to list his career, his ERA plus by year in his career.
Damn it, I knew this.
For those
of
you that don't know, right, ERA plus is like the OPS plus equivalent for pitchers. It's park adjusted, it's era adjusted. 100 is always average, so it's simple to understand, right? 2018, 60, 40% below average. 2019, 79. 2020, 29. It's 2020. We'll give him a pass. 2021, 148. 48% above average. 2022, 161, 61% above average. 2023, 87. 2024, 109, which is above average, and I think that's where he slots in as a 3 or a 4, at a 109, slightly above average. Anybody happen to remember, I don't know, what was going around in 2021 and 2022, especially with another Yankees pitcher that was heavily involved?
We got allegations now. Wow.
No, here's... Hey,
for
man.
Pete's sake.
Here's a conspiracy.
I mean, when you just look at the career numbers and you look at how big those 2 years of outliers were, and we know that Garrett Cole was using it.
Oh, 100%.
I mean,
Hey, okay. Garrett Cole, still, I mean, even without it, it took him a little bit, admittedly.
Yeah, Garrett Cole's
Just
fine because he's a good pitcher. Nestor Cortez not quite got, the arm talent that Garrett Cole does, and it showed.
No, and I'm not saying that he has to, and I'm not saying that he will, because he won't. I just think that he's going to fill this role really well, coming off of a pitching staff that was that loaded that he had the chance to learn from. Whether he did or not is another thing, but he had the chance to try things out and experiment with the Yankees. So now he is you could say, a seasoned veteran. Sure, he's not going to develop, maybe, but he has the chance to now use a lot of that stuff that he had playing in the toughest division. You can't really argue that is if not one of the toughest divisions, right? So now he's going to take all of that into a smaller market against worse teams and worse players and worse lineups, and he's now arguably maybe on his playing field a little more than he was in New York, because the talent that he's facing is not as good as what he was seeing in the AL East. So he's just it's kind of meeting in the middle between his ability as a player and the competition he was seeing. So he might even exceed a lot of those standards because he's used to seeing some really crazy baseball teams and some really well developed and well hitting lineups. I think he's just going to fill that role perfectly this year. Maybe he's not a 2. I'm not ready to die on the hill that he's the number 2 guy. Sure, 3 or 4, whatever. I do think that he is going to be incredibly productive, and he's going to overtake a lot of the expectations that were set for him coming into the season.
Give me 100 bats, I get at least 1 hit.
There it is.
Well, that's
I'm not gonna
thing.
hit the fastball. I won't. I'm not gonna hit the fastball. He's gonna hang one of them shitty curveballs that Slater was talking about earlier, and I'm gonna put it in the 5.5 hole for a solid base hit. 1 out of 100 times at least.
Exactly. And last thing I'll say with Nestor, like Austin touched on, like going to Central and kind of like the small markets and stuff like that. But I even think more than that is like I'm gonna call it Miller Park. I don't know, like they call it whatever they want now, but it's Miller Park is one of the more pitcher-friendly ballparks. It's actually like top 5 in pitcher-friendly ballparks. Pitchers really do well there compared to Yankee Stadium. Despite the short porches, is right around average when it comes to park factors when it comes to offense. Again, he's going to a more favorable situation with the home ballpark. I think he'll be a serviceable middle, like 3-4, like rotation guy.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about it a little bit, Stokes. He's kind of a finesse guy as a pitcher, and that's kind of his identity. He doesn't have an overpowering fastball, and I feel like every good bullpen almost needs to have a finesse guy as one of their starters, like a Kyle Hendricks guy that's going to keep the offense, on their heels a little bit. You got to make adjustments at the plate, and then you get, late into the game after 5 or 6 innings, bring out a hard-throwing righty out of the bullpen, and then the hitter's got to make adjustments. And so it would have been cool to see a Cortez start or something where he passes the ball to Devin Williams. Obviously, Devin Williams got traded, but it would have been really cool to see that combo, I think.
I think, you mentioned that trade, and I do want to touch on that. I think that trade was a steal. Devin Williams is an elite bullpen arm, and we didn't really need that starting pitching spot. We could give that up. We had the room. I say the Yankees had the room to give that up and to make that happen, and they filled a hole. That was, I think, their biggest move. Yet to see what happens with Bregman. I have the smallest bit of hope, but, that was a really good move, and that put Nestor in a good position, and it put Devin Williams in an incredible position in a team that's been looking for that arm out of the bullpen for a long time. Now, I think Devin Williams has a lot to prove, and we're going to get into this in a couple weeks, but kind of like Pat was saying, finesse guys, it's important. You have to have that in your lineup or in your rotation, and he showed that. He is kind of what you want on Game 3. Game 3 in the postseason. Nestor's who I would want to have the ball. Game 1, I throw maybe Game 1 or 2. A lot of guys throw their ace Game 2 just in case you need it. But, throw your ace Game 1, throw whoever else Game 2, and then bring Nestor in to really change up the flow and to change up the way things are going. And you're going to have hitters off balance, say what you will. They're not really – it's going to take them some time to adjust. And I think that's why he's going to be, I'll say serviceable as a starter.
All right, so moving off of Nasty Nestor, who does Slater have as his stay hot player for the NL Central?
I have Matt McLain. I'm a big Matt McLain guy. Obviously injured last year, but I think we saw in kind of his first full season him just really step up and really just be. It's really like an elite second baseman to where my hot take, honestly, of Matt McLain is that I think honestly right now on his trajectory that he is, if he stays healthy, I think he truly is on track for a Trey Turner type career, which is kind of a hot take to say, but I think the ballpark he plays in is very offensive friendly. And let me pull up real quick. Sorry, I didn't have it ready. His full season stats. He had 3.7 WAR. He hit 16 home runs. I think he's like a 25 like home run guy. He plays a good second base. He's athletic. He's young, and he doesn't strike out a ton. He's just a good, solid player that I think has the upside that Trey Turner has to like grow into some power and just be a true impact player.
I'm a big Matt McClain fan too, and I think that he just gets overshadowed a bit, obviously by Ellie De La Cruz, and somewhat, deservedly so, right? But I think that he is really top tier young player, and people just don't think about it because he's playing next to De La Cruz.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, I think, like, again, like, that ballpark and everything like that, I think that the bat just has, like, so much, like, more to go. And I think, again, I think he's, like, a 5 to, like, 6, like, WAR player, which is, I mean, I think, like, he's an all-star, like, caliber player, like, year in, year out. I think that's who we will be for the Reds if he can stay healthy. And he's a big part of the reason that I am, like, so bullish about the Reds is that I think if he stays healthy, you have Ellie De La Cruz, and you have all these other guys. I think that lineup, like, when you look at it, with all those guys, and, like, that just the top-end talent of, like, Ellie, Matt McClain, guys like Spencer Steer, TJ Friedel, and those guys, like, that is a good lineup of high-ceiling guys. But Matt McClain is, like, the guy I feel safest. I think he has, like, if he stays healthy, he has, like, the highest floor of just being a very good ball player.
I agree, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, just how with that Cincinnati Reds lineup, they do have that young core that I mentioned about Ellie De La Cruz. They're electric, and Matt McClain undoubtedly is a part of that electricity, and I like the way you put it. He is a little bit overshadowed by De La Cruz. However, if he just keeps his head down and keeps doing good things, this Reds team could be scary here in a few years.
Shortstops play really well infielders in general play really well under Tito. He's got a really long track record of making young infielders into really great ball players. I mean, look at any player from Boston. Look at Francisco Lindor. Look at those Guardians teams. He's really, really, really good with guys just like Matt McClain. And so I think, especially Tito coming in at the point where De La Cruz and McClain are at, it's really setting them, like those two young guys, up for success in the long run, just based off of Tito's track record. I think I also am a big Matt McClain guy. I really like his stuff. Shows a lot of promise, shows a lot of pop on a team that needs it. And man, I mean, that's just a fun team to watch when they really get going. Cruz is just a blast to watch. Matt McClain can really hit, and he's pretty solid in the field too. So I'm right there with you, man. I really like that guy.
Well, it's like it all comes down to obviously he missed like all of last year. If he can just stay healthy and be healthy when he's playing, like he'll be in the conversation for the most productive second baseman in the National League. He'll be right there with Ketel Marte for being the best second baseman in the National League, and I think he'll be a big guy to propel the Reds, especially under like Austin said, Tio Francona, to being a legitimate like National League like central contender.
Well, the Cubs fan picked a Cubs player for his stay hot player. The Cardinals fan here going to pick a Cardinals player, and I'm going to go with Ivan Herrera, the catcher, should be the everyday catcher upcoming this season with Wilson Contreras making the move to first base. I like that move for Contreras, who they talked to him and Sonny Gray about possibly being traded, but they had no trade clauses. They both, Contreras said, his quote was, paraphrasing was, that would be I could do that, but that would be like a cowardly way out. I want to stick with this team, stick with my teammates. And so he's making the move to first base. I think that'll keep him healthier longer. And Ivan Herrera is going to get to play every day at catcher as long as Oli Marmol doesn't get in the way with his love of Pedro Pages, who is a perfect backup catcher because he's good. The players love him. He's got some bravado about him. The pitching staff likes him, but he's not good enough to start. Ivan Herrera just flat out hits. He has all throughout the minors. And last year in 72 games, he very quietly, and I mean in the way that nobody really talked about it, even Cardinals fans didn't seem to notice. He had an 800 OPS and a 124 OPS plus. And I think that he could, and he's still only 25, or not quite 25, didn't turn 25 until June 1st, I think. I think he's got the chance to get, as a starting catcher, 120 to 135 games, a chance to be that kind of hitter. And I think it'll even out in a way because last year he hit 300, but he didn't slug a ton. I think in a full season, it would reverse a little bit where he might not hit quite 300, but I think he's going to hit more home runs. He showed that in the minors. And I think that OPS and OPS plus could average out to around that if he can maintain consistent and if they just give him the playing time. Now, he's got to work on the defense. He's overall grades out as a fine defender, and his arm is fine to good. He just last year had a bad issue with throwing everything arm side. Everything was to the second base side of second base. And so he had a Jose Trevino type problem where teams could just run on him a lot, but it wasn't because of lack of arm strength. It was something in his mechanics that I would like to hope somebody on the coaching staff worked with him this offseason. And if he can just be an average defensive catcher with a potential of a 124 OPS plus bat at his young age, he could be a star.
That seemed like pretty much like at the end what you touched on is like what my thoughts were on Herrera. Like I do really like the bat and like everything you said. Like I think Herrera's going to be a good MLB bat. It was when he came up, the things you touched on, throwing the second base was just a big issue. That's why you see more Pages than probably you want to see Machine, is because of just those concerns of throwing the second base, which, as we touched on with Trino, is very important. But I think it comes down to the Cardinals with their player development, with stuff like that, researching this episode, finding out the Cardinals really leading up until they've started to do it now, but didn't have things like a catching coordinator and things like that to help them out with that. It's one of those things that hopefully they figure out this year and really can work with them, and he's worked on it and can kind of figure that out. But because it's a big issue of
and that was the thing that a lot of Cardinals, I can't remember which Cardinals beat writer did, but they did a kind of a deep dive into that after this offseason, after seeing those issues with him last season, and they went back and watched tape from when he was in the minor leagues. It's just always been a problem that his throws go arm side, and nobody ever noticed and fixed it in the minor leagues. It had to become an issue at the big leagues before anybody noticed, and that's not his fault. That is an organizational failure, and this year they've added coordinators everywhere. They redid the entire player development staff. We'll see if they made the right hires. But I just hope it's not too late for a guy like Ivan Herrera.
I don't think it is. I think you've got plenty of time there. And I mean, look at, maybe the Cardinals aren't the best organization to be a catcher in. I do think that anytime you're in the same organization as one of the greatest catchers to ever do it, you learn from it. There's a lot to take there. And so I agree that he's a really great player. I think, having the move of, his former successor to first is an even better deal for the Cardinals and for their lineup, because now you're keeping that sometimes pop in there. But no, I mean, I think that Ivan Herrera is great, and I think he really is going to be one of the cornerstones for that starting nine this year.
I also want him to break out so we can figure out how to say his name, because literally half of his teammates call him Ivan and half of his teammates call him Ivan, and I don't think he has ever said yes one way or the other to the public.
Honestly, that's amazing. He's just got to keep that up. He just has to not let anyone know what his actual name is.
He's born in Panama. I'm pretty sure it's Ivan. But
a lot
of the guys in the clubhouse, when they talk about him, say, "Oh yeah, Ivan," and I'm like, that just can't be right. He's not from Europe; he's from Panama. I don't know.
But I don't want to keep it going. But we talked about the Cardinals organization. I guess I will open this up we talked about how the changes they're doing, everything like that, and like Austin talked about the history of Yadi Molina and being a catcher in the Cardinal system and everything with that. But I'm gonna open this to Machine. Obviously, I've seen when I was researching, like Cardinals fan base was really almost up in arms and really talking about these Jim Edmonds comments that were going on recently about him saying like the organization is just completely different.
I
and
do have a
everything.
take. We're running towards the end of our time, but I will quickly put my take
Yes.
out on it. I think he's a salty old guy that I think he's one
Yeah.
of those players that
Yeah.
I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I think it's ridiculous that he fell off the ballot after 1 year. I think he'll eventually get in as a committee kind of guy. But I think he's one of those guys that's a great player that isn't a good coach because he's just good. He was just good, and he doesn't really understand how to teach it. And so he just has his old school ways of, well, I don't know. I just swung at the right pitches and hit home runs, and I just got good jumps and dove and made plays. And nowadays, we require more than that in player development. We like analytics and things like that. And I think that the game kind of passed him by a little bit, and he got salty about it. And so he kind of took some digs on the way out. It was also said that it wasn't like he quit. It wasn't like, oh, I'm tired of this and I quit. Like, they had called him. The story is that they had called him to tell him that they didn't want him back as an analyst this year. And he said, well, I was about to call you and say that I didn't want to be an analyst this year anyway.
Can't fire me. I
Yeah,
quit.
exactly.
So I think Jim Edmonds was a great player, was not a fan of him as a color commentator. And I hope he, lives a good life out there on the farm in Tennessee.
Fair enough.
Any final thoughts from the peanut gallery here?
Just one quick thing about Ivan Herrera. I am a throwing instructor, and I do like throwing lessons and stuff. And so
Give him
the
a
throws
contact
down to
level.
second, especially at my time working with catchers, usually it's just a timing thing of getting the lower half going first and keeping the shoulders closed with a throw down to second. So hopefully with some professional instruction, and I haven't gotten a chance to look at any video of him, but it's probably just a small adjustment like that. And once he cleans that up, I think he'll be pretty solid defensively.
Right on.
There you have
That's
it.
all I got.
A long NL Central breakdown, a lot of passion about it. And it's going to be, I think, longer than the first episode, but we'll have another one coming up next week, hopefully. Try to keep pumping these out. Make sure to follow us on Twitter to know when things are coming out. Follow us on TikTok to keep up with the content and clips and things like that. We're going to keep this ride going. And at the end of the day, it's just good to talk ball with the boys. So
Yep.
we hope you
Let's
enjoy.
fly that W this year. Fly that W.
Fly the L, whatever. We'll see. It'll be fun to watch. It'll be highly contested. Thank you for joining us again. We'll see you next time.